Your Honor, my client has been more than generous in this settlement. Attorney Jonathan Pierce's voice echoed through the family court as he adjusted his expensive suit and shot a condescending look across the room at Keisha Hampton, who sat quietly beside her court-appointed lawyer. Generous? Judge Maria Santos raised an eyebrow. Mr. Pierce, please explain how taking everything from Mrs. Hampton constitutes generosity. Keisha's soon-to-be ex-husband, Brandon Hampton, smirked from his seat at the plaintiff's table. At 35, he was everything that screamed successful businessman. Tailored clothes, expensive watch, perfectly styled hair, and an air of superiority that filled the courtroom. Your Honor, Pierce continued, my client built his empire through hard work and business acumen. The assets in question were legally transferred to him during the marriage, with Mrs. Hampton's full consent. Brandon leaned forward, unable to contain his satisfaction. Your Honor, my soon-to-be ex-wife gave me complete control of her inheritance 5 years ago. She signed everything over willingly because she trusted me to manage our finances. Keisha felt sick listening to him twist the truth. Yes, she had signed over her inheritance, the $2.8 million her mother had left her, because Brandon had convinced her it was the smart thing to do for tax purposes and investment growth. And now, Brandon continued, she's trying to claim she deserves half of what I built with her money. But the documents are clear. She gave me those assets voluntarily. Judge Santos looked at the paperwork. Mrs. Hampton, is it true that you transferred your inheritance to your husband? Keisha's voice was barely audible. Yes, Your Honor. Why did you do that? Because I loved him and trusted him. He said it would be better for our future together. Brandon laughed. Your Honor, my wife was naive about money. She inherited $2.8 million and was keeping it in a basic savings account earning almost nothing. I took that money and turned it into a $50 million real estate empire. Using her money as the foundation, Judge Santos noted. Using my expertise and connections, Brandon corrected. Anyone can inherit money. It takes skill to multiply it. Pierce pulled out a thick folder. Your Honor, we have documented proof that Mrs. Hampton willingly transferred all inherited assets to my client. She has no legal claim to the businesses he built. Keisha's court-appointed attorney, Lisa Chun, tried to interject. Your Honor, Mrs. Hampton was told these transfers were temporary, for investment purposes. The documents say otherwise, Pierce interrupted. Complete transfer of ownership, signed and notarized. Brandon was practically glowing. Your Honor, I want to be very clear about what happened here. My wife came into this marriage with money her mother left her. Money she didn't earn, didn't understand, and couldn't properly manage. And, Judge Santos prompted, and I turned her small inheritance into a real estate empire. I did all the work, made all the connections, took all the risks. She contributed nothing but the initial capital. Keisha felt tears starting. This was exactly what she'd feared when she first hesitated to sign those papers. But Brandon had been so convincing, so loving, so confident that he was protecting their future. So now that I'm successful, Brandon continued, she wants to claim half of everything I built. But that's not how business works, Your Honor. She was paid back her initial investment long ago through the lifestyle I provided. Paid back? Judge Santos asked. The house we lived in, the cars I bought her, the vacations, the clothes. She's been living off the profits of my investments for 5 years. Pierce nodded. Mrs. Hampton received far more value than her original $2.8 million investment. My client has been more than fair. Brandon stood up, unable to contain himself. Your Honor, let me be blunt. I married a woman who inherited money she didn't deserve and couldn't handle. I took that money and built something real with it. Now she's trying to punish me for my success. Punish you how? By claiming she deserves half of my empire. Your Honor, she signed away her inheritance willingly. She can't take it back just because she regrets trusting me with her money. Keisha finally looked up. I trusted you because I loved you, Brandon. And I proved that trust was well placed by making us both rich. Brandon shot back. But apparently being rich isn't enough for you. You want to destroy what I built out of spite. Judge Santos studied the documents. Mr. Hampton, what exactly are you leaving Mrs. Hampton with in this divorce? Brandon's smile was cruel. She's getting exactly what she brought to our marriage besides that inheritance, nothing. She can go back to whatever she was doing before she got lucky with her mother's life insurance payout. So to be clear, you're taking the entire $50 million empire that was built with her money and leaving her with nothing? I'm keeping what I built with my skills and expertise. She's free to go build her own empire if she's so capable. Pierce added, Mrs. Hampton is young and healthy. She can rebuild her life. With what money? Judge Santos asked. Brandon shrugged. That's not my problem. She made her choice when she signed those papers. The courtroom was silent except for Keisha's quiet crying. Judge Santos looked at the settlement papers, then suddenly picked up a document that had been delivered during the proceedings. Mrs. Hampton, I've just received notice from the probate court regarding your father's estate. Keisha looked confused through her tears. My father? Your Honor, my father passed away last month, but he didn't have much of anything. Actually, Mrs. Hampton, it appears there are some documents that need to be read into the record as they pertain to this divorce proceeding. Judge Santos put on her reading glasses. The last will and testament of William Bill Jackson, dated 3 years ago. Brandon looked bored. Your Honor, with all due respect, Keisha's father was a maintenance worker. This can't be relevant to. Judge Santos began reading. I, William Jackson, being of sound mind and body, having watched my son-in-law convince my daughter to sign away her inheritance, do hereby leave my entire secret estate to my beloved daughter, Keisha Jackson Hampton. The courtroom went quiet. Brandon's smirk faltered. Secret estate? Judge Santos continued. Said estate includes all holdings of Jackson Holdings LLC, Jackson Properties International, and all subsidiary companies and investments, which I kept separate and secret to protect my daughter from her husband's greed. Brandon's face went white. What did she just say? The total value of said estate, as appraised by Morrison Financial Services, is approximately $640 million. The silence that followed was deafening. Brandon shot to his feet. That's impossible. Her father was a janitor. Judge Santos kept reading. Furthermore, I leave to my daughter the attached letter explaining why I hid my wealth and why I never intervened when her husband took her mother's inheritance. Keisha was staring at the judge in complete shock. Your Honor, I don't understand. My father worked maintenance. He lived in a tiny apartment. According to this will, Mrs. Hampton, your father owned the company where he worked maintenance, along with commercial properties in 12 countries. Pierce was frantically flipping through papers. Your Honor, this has to be some kind of fraud. The will also includes a personal letter, Judge Santos continued. Mrs. Hampton, would you like me to read it? Keisha nodded, unable to speak. Judge Santos unfolded a handwritten letter. My dearest Keisha, if you're hearing this, then I'm gone and you're probably sitting in a courtroom watching your husband try to take everything from you. Keisha gasped. I know you're wondering why I never stopped him from convincing you to sign away your mother's inheritance. I know you probably think I didn't care or didn't understand what was happening. Brandon was gripping the table, his face pale with growing horror. But baby girl, I saw exactly what kind of man you married. I watched him manipulate you into giving him your money. I heard him tell you it was for investment purposes and tax benefits. Judge Santos looked up at Brandon, whose confident demeanor had completely crumbled. I let him take your mother's money because I wanted to see his true character. I wanted you to see it too. A man who truly loves you doesn't convince you to give him everything you have. Keisha was sobbing now, but they were different tears than before. So I kept my own wealth secret, building it quietly while watching your husband show you exactly who he really was. I knew that someday, you would need protecting from the man who convinced you to trust him with everything. Brandon looked like he was having a panic attack. This isn't happening. This can't be real. Judge Santos continued. Keisha, your husband took your inheritance and built his empire with it. Now he thinks he's leaving you with nothing. But he never knew about the real family money. The fortune your grandfather built that I grew, and that I kept hidden to protect you from exactly this situation. The courtroom was dead silent. The man who convinced you to give him $2.8 million thinks he's destroyed you financially. He doesn't know that you now own $640 million that he can never touch, never claim, and never knew existed. Judge Santos folded the letter. Mrs. Hampton, you are now the sole owner of Jackson Holdings International, one of the largest private real estate companies in the world. Keisha sat in stunned silence. Brandon, meanwhile, looked like his world was ending. But she gave me her money. I built everything with her inheritance. Pierce was reading frantically. Your Honor, surely this doesn't change the existing agreements. Mr. Pierce, this inheritance has nothing to do with any agreements made during the marriage. This is Mrs. Hampton's separate property, inherited after the divorce was filed. Brandon's voice was desperate now. Keisha, honey, we can work this out. We built my empire together. We can rebuild together. Keisha looked at him with new understanding. Brandon, 5 minutes ago you were telling the judge that I contributed nothing to our marriage except money I didn't earn and didn't deserve. But that was different. You were telling the truth. You took my inheritance, built your empire with it, and now you're trying to leave me with nothing while keeping everything my money built. Brandon was sweating. Keisha, I was protecting us. I made your money grow. You made my money grow for you. You convinced me to sign it all over to you. And now you're divorcing me and keeping everything. Judge Santos cleared her throat. Mrs. Hampton, given this new information about your father's estate, how would you like to proceed with the settlement? Keisha stood up slowly. Your Honor, I'd like to keep the original agreement exactly as Brandon proposed it. Brandon's face lit up with desperate hope. He can keep his $50 million empire that he built with my mother's inheritance. I don't want any of it. Keisha, that's very generous, Judge Santos said. Oh, I'm not being generous, Your Honor. I want Brandon to have exactly what he said he deserved. The empire he built by convincing his wife to give him all her money. Brandon's hopeful expression began to crumble as he realized where this was going. And I want him to live with the knowledge that the wife he thought he'd left broke and desperate is actually worth 12 times more than everything he took from her. Brandon's face went from pale to red. But Keisha, we could be partners now. Real partners. Partners. Keisha laughed bitterly. Brandon, you convinced me to give you my inheritance, built an empire with it, and then divorced me to keep it all. What kind of partnership is that? But I didn't know about your father's money. Exactly. Which means your decision to take everything and leave me with nothing had nothing to do with how much money I had. It had everything to do with your character. Judge Santos banged her gavel. Divorce granted on the original terms. Mr. Hampton keeps his business empire. Mrs. Hampton inherits her father's estate. As Keisha gathered her things, Brandon called out desperately. Keisha, wait. We can start over. We can do this right. She turned around one last time. Brandon, you had 5 years to do this right. Instead, you spent that time convincing me to give you everything I had, then tried to throw me away when you thought I had nothing left. But now I know you're rich. That changes everything.
No, Brandon.
Now you know I'm rich, which proves that your willingness to destroy me financially had nothing to do with money and everything to do with who you really are. Pierce grabbed Brandon's arm. Stop talking. You're making this worse. But Brandon shook him off. Keisha, I love you. She smiled sadly. Brandon, if you loved me, You never would have convinced me to give you my inheritance. If you loved me, you wouldn't be trying to leave me with nothing. And if you loved me, finding out I have money wouldn't suddenly make you want me back." Keisha walked toward the exit, then paused. "My father saw exactly who you were from the beginning. That's why he protected me. He knew that someday you'd show your true colors." "What do you mean?" "He knew you'd take everything I gave you and then throw me away when you thought I had nothing left to take." Brandon was shouting now. "That's not fair. You can't judge me for taking money you gave me willingly." Keisha looked at him one last time. "I'm not judging you for taking the money, Brandon. I'm judging you for trying to keep it all while leaving me with nothing. There's a difference between accepting a gift and robbing someone blind." As the courtroom door closed behind her, Keisha could hear Brandon pleading with his lawyer about appeals and challenging the will. But she didn't look back. Outside the courthouse, Keisha pulled out her phone and called her best friend. "Tracy, it's over." "How bad was it?" Keisha started laughing through her tears. "Tracy, my father was apparently worth $640 million, and he hid it from everyone to protect me from my own husband." "What?" "Brandon took my entire inheritance, built a $50 million empire with it, then tried to divorce me and keep everything. But my father saw it coming and made sure I'd be protected." Keisha looked back at the courthouse where Brandon was probably still trying to figure out how to get his hands on her father's money. But those assets were protected in ways he'd never understand, set up by a man who'd spent years watching his son-in-law's true character reveal itself. "The man who thought he'd destroyed me financially just discovered he married one of the richest women in the state," Keisha told Tracy. "And he lost her because he was too greedy to love her." As she walked down the courthouse steps, Keisha felt her father's presence like a warm embrace. He'd protected her in ways she never could have imagined, ensuring that the man who took everything from her would learn exactly what he'd lost. Behind her, through the courthouse windows, she could see Brandon arguing frantically with his lawyers, finally understanding that his greed had cost him everything that mattered. But Keisha didn't feel sorry for him. Her father had taught her one final lesson. Sometimes the best protection comes not from stopping someone from showing their true colors, but from making sure you're safe when they finally do. Brandon had revealed exactly who he was, and her father had made sure she'd survive the revelation. The daughter who thought she'd lost everything had inherited more than she'd ever dreamed, and the man who thought he'd taken everything had lost the only thing that was truly priceless. Some lessons, Keisha realized, can only be learned the hard way. And some fathers love their daughters enough to let them learn those lessons while making sure they're protected when the teaching is done.